Hi, this is Janet with Try It Like It Create It, and today I am going to make a pair of quick earrings using UV resin that dries rather quickly, and all you need is a tube of resin. I am using their blue color, and this is their jewelry gel. So if you go on their website, they have a couple of different kinds of resin, and the one I'm using here is jewelry gel. The difference being between the other resins they carry and the jewelry is that jewelry dries a little bit harder, and since my inclusions that I'm going to be putting in are blue, I'm going to go with the blue resin. So I've got some sparkles here, kind of glittery, and then I have some mica dots as well. So for the first thing, I'm going to take my mold and I'm going to pick which layout I want, and I really like the size of these. So the first thing I'm going to do is put down a small amount of blue in the chamber and just make sure it goes all the way around, and I am going to then expose this before adding the inclusions on top. So I am basically going to sandwich all of that glittery stuff in between two layers of resin. All right, now I've got a thin layer down. I'm going to give it a tap, and I can see here that I didn't get everything covered like I wanted to, given the fact that I couldn't see the part that was facing away from me. So I am just going to take a T-pin here. Grab one off the magnet here. So I'm just going to take a pin. Really anything silicone would work. This pin will work great. However, you want to make sure you don't poke through your mold. Okay, and also I am using daylight lighting, and so that might harden up my resin a little bit more so than I really want it to, or do it kind of right away. So it's not going to give me quite as much time to work with it, but I think looks like we're going to be good to go. I don't really see any air bubbles, and so I am going to go ahead and now expose this for about a minute with my UV flashlight. Alright, so I can tell that this is set. You can see that the color isn't so much blue. It's transparent for sure. It's got a light color to it. Alright, but most of all I can tell it's set because there is some heat. I can feel heat, which is the chemical reaction that happens when the resin is set. For the next step, since my resin is now hard, I've got one layer of resin down, and you can see that it did not fill the chamber all the way. So now I'm going to put my inclusions in. I'm going to start by just picking some up with tweezers and letting them kind of drop into place. It's a little bit messy. I think I want just a little bit more in this bottom one. And because I'm just randomly dropping these in here, of course they're not going to be the same, but they will be similar. And you can see here that I have glitter that has kind of gone everywhere. I have some in the other shapes. I have some around the outside here that I can choose to drop in if I want and pick up and place, or just leave them to clean up later. And a really nice way to clean these up afterwards is using something like masking tape if you need to pick up all these little remnant things. All right, so there's that. And I really like the look of, I guess, the small dust, if I can call it that. I don't even know if it's picking up on camera. But I'm going to see if I can get that to duplicate there a little bit. All right, so now we're ready. I'm sealing up the bag because I know if I don't, I'll spill it everywhere. And so the next thing we're going to do is add in these flakes. And I'm going to try to grab just a small amount because, once again, a little bit goes a long way. I can always add more, but it is kind of hard to take them out of here when you don't want as much as you got. All right, so I am rather happy with the look of those, and I'm gonna leave the cleanup around the outer edges here for after I am done putting in the rest of my resin. Just move things around just a little bit. Okay. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to fill this up, and I might do it with 2 exposures because this is a deep channel here. So I'm just going to lay a nice amount of resin down, and as it builds up you can now start to see that blue color more than with the small layer. All right, now back to using the pin, and I am just gonna move things around here a little bit, make sure everything is covered and the resin is out to all edges. Anything sticking out at this point can be submerged. Right, so I am going to try to submerge another piece up in here. There we go. Okay. Just gonna move a little bit of that glitter around just because I didn't have anything up in this corner as much as I did in other areas. So just trying to fill things in. All right, and I'm just going around to make sure that all sides look similar. I can always sand this down after it's made to even things out. All right, I'm just going to give it a nice little tap to make sure, and then once again I am going to expose this with my light. All right, so that, yeah, I feel the heat, so that should set it. And we can take a look from both sides here. Now before I take them out, I'm going to fill it one more time just to make sure I've got everything filled in there. Okay. Alright, I do like what I have here, but for just one last step, I'm going to take some of this LA Color eyeshadow, which is a mineral powder, and I am just going to dust over the top so it gives it a little bit of color and a little bit of glam, and hopefully, I don't know, I may need to dump more in here than what I'm thinking I'm going to get with the brush. But remember, this surface here is hard because I've already cured it. So what I'm doing here is just adding powder on top of a hard, kind of plasticky surface, if you will. And this is giving it just another level of sparkle here. It's subtle, but I can see the difference. Alright, so I'm gonna say that's enough. Hopefully you can see it, and I have a brush hair there. I'm gonna take out it. And now I'm just gonna fill the rest of the way with resin. And once again, I'm going to go in here and make sure all of our sides look similar. Try to get rid of any air bubbles. Alright, so just giving it a nice tap. Make sure we got everything. And I see an air bubble coming up, so I want to work on that before I put the light on it for one more time. So I can feel the heat, and now it is time to reveal. So I'm just gonna slide these guys out and we'll take a look. I'm gonna have to, I can tell I'm gonna have to sand a little bit off the back because the hole that I will go through is closed off on the back here. And I do have a little bit of extra around the edge that I'm gonna wanna sand off. And I have that same thing with this one. And what I'm talking about here is if I turn it to the side, maybe you can see there's like a little bit sticking out right there. But looking at the side, from the side, can you tell that there's the 3 layers? And there is what they look like finished. Let me grab a piece of white paper and bring them in closer for you to see if that helps. And then all I need to do is sand off the back, or I could go in with resin again and bubble this over. It does feel a little sticky, so I think I might give it a little bit more light. And I'll come back and show you the rest in just a minute. Before we move on finishing off our earrings, I want to show you, this is the tray, and you can see that there are glitter pieces left. Now I'm just using plain old masking tape here, but you know, Scotch tape works great as well. Basically, you just want to go in here and pick up any remaining dust, glitter, anything that's left. Now, your mold came packaged in a plastic sleeve, and those are rather important, and you don't want to throw them away, because what they do is they are a dust barrier, so that the next time you go to use your mold, it's going to be nice and clean, and you don't have to worry about having any residue left in there. And so I'm just going over this with my tape, but I am being, I guess, very aggressive with it to make sure I get everything off of the mold that I can. And it looks like a little air bubble there, but it's actually some leftover resin. So even though I didn't use these pieces over here, it did get some dust in them. So I want to go through and clean that off before I go any further. And then just to not waste any more of your time, there's just a little bit of glitter left. I'll just leave it. I'm going to then put it back in the plastic that it came in so that it doesn't get any dust on it. So sorry for the crinkling. I know that that can be annoying. Alright, but these, any kind of bag, you could use Ziploc bag, whatever you want to store them in, but you do want to store them in some kind of closed container so that you don't get any dust in there. In fact, what I could have done before making these earrings is that I could have taped off these areas, and then I wouldn't have had to clean them because they would have been, you know, protected. So let me set that aside, and then let's move into the earrings. And what you're seeing here is a difference between the two, is that I worked on this one off camera, and so what I've done is I've gone around with an emery board and I have just sanded off all of the rough areas, and I know that that looks like I just ruined it, but we're going to go back in and polish that up afterwards. So I want to just make sure everything's nice and smooth and it feels good on all sides. Now, and then here is what the clear looks like in comparison. You can see the cloudiness. All right, so now I am just going over it with an emery board. It's going to create dust. You could wear a mask at this point. However, UV resin is non-toxic, so you don't have to worry about it. But you may not want this dust, you know, in your lungs. So I am just going to kind of round off the sides here. And a lot of times that dust, even though you thought your piece was nice and smooth, you can see that that dust gets in a little crevice or an air pocket and shows up little flaws that you didn't even know your piece had. So I'm just going to finish this one up, and you can see it doesn't take a lot for this one. I just had a few extra pieces hanging over the back that I wanted to clear off, and I wanted to clear off that opening to turn this into jewelry. Now, the other thing I can do is I can continue to add to this. Of course, I could fill the back in with more resin. I could also add, if I wanted to, show you if I have some here, gilding flakes. So if I wanted to put like a silver backing behind there, I could put some adhesive, you know, clear adhesive on the back, and I could put on that silver onto the back, and then have that for my earrings. And so now I'm just feeling these to make sure I have everything filed down before we move on. So let me just double check here, make sure everything's good enough. I think we're good to go. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is bring in a fiber cloth and clean up all the dust from the area that I'm working in. And so I am just going to get off as much dust from here as I can. I have some things falling out of a bag behind me, if you just heard that. All right, and now I'm gonna check this opening because it looks like it had something in it, but it's okay. So whatever it is, just cleared itself out. All right, so there was nothing in there. It must have been just a piece of dust or something. The other thing you can do here is a little bit of water or a little bit of alcohol. So I'm just going to spritz them both to get them wet, and then go back in and clean off all that excess dust. All right, so there we are. We are back to being pretty clear. If I wanted to touch them up any further, I could put some resin on here, probably just applying it with my finger, and I might do that on the backs here because you can see that there is still some white showing on those areas. Let me just polish this up a little bit more. That water really took a lot of it off, and with the cloth it has polished it up really nicely. So I don't have to do as much fixing as I thought I would. Really just to the backs of these pieces, and once again it's the back, so I probably don't need to do it, but just let me see if I can bring it in close enough to show you. You know, they're shiny again. There is a little bit of white or lighter showing around the edge, so I kind of want to, well, now I'm having a hard time telling you which is which side. Okay, so I was showing you the wrong side actually. So there, I think even around the hole you can see there's a little bit of white showing up. So let me go back to grab the resin, and this one isn't showing up as much or as bad, but let me just grab the resin and I'll show you what I mean. Now I'm just going to continue to use the blue. You could go back in with a clear or even with a different kind of UV resin, but I'm just gonna take a drop onto my finger of the blue, and I'm just gonna lightly go over these areas with my finger, and that's all that it needs. Now it's sticky. All right, and I'm gonna have to use the light on that again. To finish that off. Okay, so to finish these off, they have now gotten all of their dustiness away. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a jump ring. Hopefully I grabbed one that's large enough. And then with 2 needle nose pliers here, I am going to twist the wire open. And I'm going to have to go quite large since I know this opening is large. Or I should say, what I'm trying to say is the width here of this piece is large. And okay, that jump ring will work. It is going to be snug in there. Well, let's see if I can get the ear wire onto this. I can. Let's see how that's going to hang. It's going to hang sideways, so if I want it to hang open, I'm going to need another, let me grab another little jump ring for this. All right, that will do it. So this first one, I'm just going to grab it and close it up. And this can be easier said than done at times, especially when you're trying to video what you're doing here. But I am going to attempt to squeeze these 2 back together here. Bring those up to the top, and I may just have to do it with 1 pair of pliers. Not exactly the best. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to squeeze this really tight, grab hold of this one, and now work to get those 2 together. There we go. All right. All right, this was a pretty tight fit, and probably what I should have done was go with a little bit larger wire. Not necessarily the wire, but the jump ring itself. I think that will hold. Okay, one more time. I'm going to squeeze from the sides here. All right, now I'm happy with that. Okay, so then I'm going to take the small jump ring here, find the opening, and pretty much do the same thing. I'm going to twist it open, hook it onto here. All right, and then hook it onto the earring. Twist it back into place. You can see how much easier that was than trying to work with that large one. All right, so there we go. Finished earring. All right, so you can see how it's going to hang.